Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a review, and it's actually the second from this house. This is one of those houses that I know whenever I do one of these videos, it's not going to get the views. It's just the way it is. And yet, I want to run this channel the way that I want to run it, and I actually enjoy doing these videos. It's funny because if you actually search this house, my review of Tabak is one of the only reviews from the, well, not one of the only reviews because there are some others, but there's very few reviews from this house. The house is called La Via del Profumo. La Via del Profumo. And the gentleman's name who runs this house, his birth name is Dominique Dubrana. Dominique Dubrana. But he's an Italian gentleman, an Italian chap, who changed his name to AbdesSalaam Attar. And if you go to base notes to make it even more confusing, they named the house AbdesSalaam Attar, but it's not. It's La Via del Profumo. Actually, it's his website is profumo.it. But he's a very interesting character. He changed to Sophie, I believe. He's a Sophie convert, and he makes 100% natural perfumery. So if you want more of a backstory on the house, go watch my sort of original video of Tabak that I did about a year ago. It's been a year since I've done anything on this house. And you know what? We're going to do some fresh applications because Ramsey has a lot of perfume to go through. And so let's use the shit, shall we? This stuff is actually really good. Very, very good. It's different, but it's very good. And it's 100% natural. So he makes it a point on his website. He basically says, I want to work with natural ingredients the same way that somebody who loves art or working with rare stones or is a jeweler doesn't want to work with costume jewelry. He said, sure, costume jewelry may have its place for the kids, but a proper bride is only going to take a real ring with a real jewel, a real diamond in there, right? She's not going to take a fake diamond. A real quality bride would only accept real gold and a real diamond, right? And that's the way he kind of explains his love of real perfume materials. And so he says that he tried to make some of these perfumes using some of the synthetics and stuff that were popular, and he just couldn't do it. And it's a really damning way that he kind of looks down on the synthetic on the industry. And so this one's pretty interesting. It's called Pheromone. Terrible name, but really interesting fragrance. I don't know when it came out. My guess is maybe something like 10 years ago, maybe somewhere around those lines. I don't know. I know this guy's been at it for a while. There's no release year on either his website or Profumo or base notes or anything like that. But this is a fragrance that is sort of in the same handful of fragrances that I've referenced on the channel that have to do with real ambergris. So if you go back and think about things like, for example, I've reviewed Ambre Suprême by Les Indemodables. That's a fantastic ambergris fragrance. That's one such example. I also recently did a live stream. I guess I should have been ready, but when you work all day, sometimes you have to do things on the fly. So I also did a live stream on the new Areej Dore, and one of them was an ambergris heavy fragrance called Creme de la Creme. And Creme de la Creme is an example of a very well done, natural, modern ambergris fragrance. And this is one such fragrance. So basically, the way that I would describe this, okay, and what's interesting about it is, for such a good take on ambergris, it gets almost no love. I mean, almost negative love. You have to really search for it. I don't even think Base Notes has like a category for this one. You can just kind of see one person's review that they created their own thread on. And like I said, horrible name, fantastic ingredients. And so the ambergris here, the most amazing thing about this is 2 notes are front and center with this fragrance, okay? One is ambergris, obviously. The other is castoreum. And when you first spray, there's maybe something a little minty, almost like, you know how you know how Kinam Oud has this sort of mintiness. There's almost like this strange minty undertone to the fragrance when you first spray, but it goes away very quickly. That mintiness is almost like a fresh spearmint smell right from the beginning, and then it very quickly goes away, and the ambergris is just beautifully front and center right there. Okay, and so if you've ever heard me describe ambergris, I will describe it as something almost holographic or shining a light on the other ingredients. You know, it has this quality of radiance about it. It really makes the fragrance feel full in 3D and airy, has this airy aspect about it. And so for me, this type of perfumery, well, first of all, the number one thing to say is that this type of perfumery is not for the people out there talking about Lattafa clones, Al Rehab clones, you know, getting hyped up about the new Parfum de Marly. 99% of the time, I don't even know what the hell the new Parfum de Marly is, right? These are for people who want to take that next step in the fragrance game. They've moved on from channels like Curly Scents and all that bullshit, you know, this is a panty dropper fragrance. They're past that, okay? They want to really dive into perfumery. And when you really dive into the art of perfumery, you start to find these houses like La Via del Profumo, which may sound like it's some off-the-wall, nobody type brand. But the reality is that this guy is actually one of Luca Turin's favorite perfumers. Many people don't know that, but it's true. Luca Turin raves about this guy. AbdesSalaam Attar is what he goes by now. But like I said, Dominique Dubrana was his original name. So this is like a perfume that doesn't really smell like a perfume. But if you are a fan of studying individual notes, like if you're someone who says, okay, I'm ready to take that next step, and now I'm going to explore oud, now I'm going to explore sandalwood, now I'm going to explore ambergris, this is one for the ambergris exploration. Absolutely. And I mentioned a couple earlier, but the ambergris in this is photorealistic, beautiful, front and center. Okay, you really will learn ambergris studying a fragrance like this. And you know, it almost feels like there's this, the reason I said it almost feels like a hologram effect is because, you know, if you've ever seen like a wave come up on a shore, right? You're sitting on the beach, the wave comes up on the shore and it goes back, right? It recedes. But it doesn't just recede, it leaves all this stuff behind, right? It leaves behind seashells and salt and brine and, you know, this briny, almost like hydrogen peroxide, you know, bubbly stuff gets left from the sea. And this holographic leftover effect is beautiful in this one. That is the way it literally wears on your skin. So when you first spray, maybe there's a little bit of an inkling of that mintiness that's there, just a little bit of a freshness. I think, even though there is a bergamot note listed, I don't get very much bergamot, to be 100% honest with you. I would, if you would have twisted my arm and said, Ramsey, what type of citrus is in here? I would have said something like a yuzu, because yuzu usually gives off that maybe a little sort of tart and slightly bitter type smell, but very vibrant and sort of sparkling. That's a good word for it. Like this sparkling, vibrant, zesty, slightly bitter, tangy sensation is a good way to describe yuzu. And so it's almost like a combination of sweet and bitter, but I think the bitter takes over here. There is maybe some sweetness underlying, which I think has to do with the lavender used. Really, this fragrance isn't really like a pyramid. It's like the castoreum and the ambergris are the main notes. What are behind this, when you smell this, the base really feels like it's made up of oak moss and sandalwood, and that's a real smelling ingredient. So you get the real textured oak moss, you get the very smooth, amazing, high quality, real sandalwood. But the castoreum and the ambergris are the front and center notes, and then behind them are the sandalwood and the oak moss, and then everything else, you know, the lavender, the bergamot that's listed, the pipe tobacco, which I don't get hardly any of that. It really, the iris, which I get almost none, no iris, even though it's listed as a note. They really feel like big time just supporting casters, cast members, way on the outside, if you will, right? And so, like I said, I think maybe a tiny bit of mint that isn't listed or spearmint, a sort of tiny bit of yuzu, which is not listed, although they list bergamot, but you really don't get much citruses. I mean, it's right there, 5-10 seconds, and bam, you're into the ambergris and the castoreum. And, you know, if you've ever heard my description of ambergris as like being on the ocean, a bright sunny day, no clouds, the sun is shining down on the wave, and every time the ocean sort of rocks and the waves go up and go down and crash against each other, there are different specks of light that the sun hits in the ocean, right? And when those different specks of light get hit, the specks kind of reflect in your eye and you see the sparkles, like someone threw glitter all over the ocean, right? There's just these sparkles from the sun all over. Beautiful, right? That's kind of what the ambergris, that's what high quality ambergris feels like. But while doing that, there is this feeling of being left behind, the wave coming up, receding, and leaving behind all that salty brine, and that's what it feels like on your skin. You know, it feels like the wave, the ocean has literally come in, landed where you sprayed, and pulled back and has left all of these residues on your skin is really what it feels like. And there's this transparent, airy quality about it. You know, when I was reviewing the Digit and Zac fragrances, I mentioned that they have a very airy and transparent like feel. They wear like a translucent skin, like a layer, like a see-through layer on your skin. And that's how this wears, but it smells, I've never smelled any Digit and Zac fragrance that smells as high quality as this. This smells, I would put this brand above Digit and Zac, honestly, as far as from what I'm smelling. That's just my personal opinion. They're less expensive too, I believe, from what I've been seeing. But that sort of points glistening like confetti on the water, that remnants of the sea is a good descriptor. And what's interesting is here, what I kept thinking, and I've worn this for a while, by the way. This was a gift. Originally, someone sent me a decant, and I believe this was Armando, if I'm not mistaken. If it's not Armando, I apologize, but Armando's influence continues on the channel, even though I haven't seen him in a while. And so he sent me this decant, very, very kind decant. And I pretty much ran through it. And on one of the hauls that I got from him, he sent me a bottle. And now, one thing that I will mention while I'm thinking about it is if you go to his website right now, there is a little write-up on this. It says, although pheromones largely influence the reproductive process of all animal species, their discovery is very recent and dates back to the 1950s. So I feel like I need to talk a little bit about pheromones, because there's a lot of products out there that claim if you wear this pheromone, you know, women will be all over you kind of thing. I don't believe any of that. That's bullshit. For me, I think there are animal pheromones in the animal kingdom, like for example, the musk pod is an example of an animal pheromone made to attract the female deer, made to mark the male deer territory. Men and women have been putting animal pheromones on themselves as a ritual for thousands of years, millennia, who knows how long. But there's no such thing as a human pheromone, from my understanding. You know, pheromone could be described as maybe like putting your hands between your underarms and sniffing them, right? Or like in between the crotch of your legs, right? And smelling them. That could be the closest thing to maybe a human sweaty pheromone you're going to get, but there's no such thing. And from my understanding of it, there's no pheromone that's clinically proven to just make a woman just be all over you like a female deer. That doesn't exist. Any of those products selling human pheromones, complete bullshit as far as I'm concerned. So what I feel that this brand is doing is that they are taking this very simple idea, which is 2 animalic notes front and center, ambergris and castoreum, and maybe giving the impression of what human pheromones would smell like if there were such a thing. Now there's not, but if there were, it's like when I talked a little bit about Aquilaria blossom with the Areej Dore. The idea with that release was, what would a blossom on an oud tree look like? Well, oud trees don't really have blossoms, but like from an artistic standpoint, what would that look like? What would it smell like? And I love those kind of exercises. I think they're very, very smart ways to go about creating a fragrance, right? And so that is what I'm assuming he was going for. I don't think, see, this is not marketed the same way that some of these other pheromone fragrances are marketed. This is not marketed in the same way. So my guess is that, and here he goes on to say, however, natural pheromones produced by various animals have been used by man since ancient times for both pharmaceutical purposes and to increase one's charm and sexual energy. There was a lot of, there was a big deal about ambergris and like what's a good word for it? Like the virility of a man. So if you go back and read, I think someone told me it was King Henry VIII of Great Britain, or the United Kingdom, whatever you want to call them, England. King Henry VIII used to, every morning, he would eat his eggs with ambergris grated on top. They would take a hunk of ambergris and literally grate it like you would grate cheese, because he thought it would keep him virile. And so whether that's true or not, I have no idea. Although I would not mind tasting some ambergris sprinkled on eggs. I will not lie. Although that is a damn expensive meal nowadays. I think you may have to be a king to do that. Especially when one of those chunks of ambergris can go for like 100 grand or something, 200 grand, 300 grand. It's crazy. But so yes, says pheromones act in a subtle but powerful way through an olfactory organ dedicated to them, the vomeronasal organ. Okay. Pheromone for men is 100% natural fragrance whose main ingredients are ambergris and castoreum. Yes, I 100% agree with that. And he talks about creating this enveloping masculine olfactory accord, because this is pheromone pour homme. There's also a pheromone pour femme. Okay, so continuing on with that thought line of thinking. I think that he was very smart in the way he dosed the castoreum versus the ambergris, because the ambergris to me never gets outshined. It never gets outclassed. Now, one thing that I guess you could make a maybe beef about is that it's a very linear fragrance. It's very, what you're going to smell is what you're going to get, and it kind of goes like that until it just fades away. There's no big, grand finale fireworks show at the end. It just really kind of slowly just fades away. And, but the tenacity of it on your skin is very impressive, because you have to remember, real ambergris in the past was used as a fixative for perfume. So whoever the genius was to decide to put ambergris in perfume learned that it will actually fix the fragrance to the skin and make it stick longer, make it stay longer, because ambergris has a substance called ambrine that can lock in scent for an unbelievably long amount of time. So that's how ambergris was used, and that's one of the reasons why usually natural fragrances just fly off the skin. They don't last. It's also very hard to make 100% natural fragrances, but here, this particular one, even though it's linear and simplistic, you get that simple sandalwood, oak moss backbone, you get that simple ambergris, castoreum combination in the top. Even though it's simple, you can smell it for hours and hours and hours, all day, basically all day. You don't really need to apply as much as I did there. I have so much fragrance that my goal is to use all this before I die, so I figure I better get spraying. And so you don't have to spray as much as I did there in the opening. But where I was going with this is that castoreum note, I think, has the ability to kind of have been an overshadower. It could have kind of put a dark hand over the castoreum and made it extremely leathery, which I actually probably would have liked. But it would have taken away from the airy aspect of this scent, which it has. This has a very airy, almost like you're literally, it almost smells like this is how your sweat should smell. Like I was listening to Alexander the Great podcast, and that guy's funny as hell, by the way. If you want kind of a podcast that has some history, but also is pretty damn funny, listen to the Alexander the Great podcast. And the guy was saying that there are reports that Alexander the Great, when he sweated, it literally smelled like flowers and stuff like that. Like his sweat smelled like perfume. This is how I would imagine with this pheromone pour homme. This is how I would imagine someone, a great man in history, smelling if they just, were just doing like a Olympic triathlon and you were right next to them or something, It has this sweaty feel because of the ambergris. Obviously, the ambergris gives off that musky, sweaty, airy type feel. And, it's like pumping air into a balloon. It just makes the scent just feel so sort of, even though it's very singular and very simple and linear, even though it's all of those things, it feels like it takes up a vast amount of space, like the ozone in the sky. You know, you see it everywhere. But it's not something that is just in your face, but it's there, right? It's always there. You look up, the sky's there, right? That kind of thing. That's kind of the way that the fragrance feels. Ambergris just adds this, you know, it adds this space to the fragrance. So I really feel like he did a good job not amping up the castoreum too much, because the castoreum, the mixture that he created, sometimes ambergris on its own can have leathery facets. So you don't always need castoreum to give it extra leathery push, but here he used a little bit of castoreum, I think, to amplify that leathery part of the ambergris. So ambergris, you know, gives it that musky, salty vibe, but almost the castoreum that he used almost feels like it blends with the ambergris in a way where you're smelling the animalics of the castoreum, but it feels like you're smelling the animalics of the ambergris. So my guess is he used a very clean ambergris and just made this accord with the castoreum that gave it this sort of slightly dirty vibe. It's not super dirty, because like I said, it's almost like a sweat. It's almost like sweat on your skin, like you've been working out hard and there's sweat on your skin. And the simplicity of the scent is really what makes it. It really does. And so for me, having this residue feeling, things left behind, those are the words that keep coming back to my head every time I've worn this. And I've worn a lot of this. I mean, this was probably, I don't know, 80% full when I got it. If I had to, 75, 80% full. So you can see I've worn a lot of this. This is a 16 ml bottle. Now, speaking of the bottle, while I'm remembering, I meant to say it earlier and then I got off rambling on something else. But if you go to his website and you go to Pheromone pour Homme, first of all, he misspelled it. There's a different spelling between here and what's actually written on, or actually I think it's a Italian website that is converted to English. So he didn't misspell it, the conversion did. But they've got PH Pheromone pour Homme, whereas here it's F Pheromone. But basically where I was going with this is, if you look on the website that he has, it says new formula next to it, and the juice is much greener than mine, much greener. So I don't know if there's been a reformulation. I don't know if even that's a bad, I don't know if it's even a bad thing if there was a reformulation, because all of his stuff is natural and he takes a lot of pride in what he does. So I wouldn't be scared to try the new one, I'll put it that way. But it does look like there has been some changes from the older juice to the newer one. Just something to mention, to make note. So imagine, like, you know what I was thinking of, that residue or things left behind. I was thinking about a fingerprint, right? Imagine like getting all sweaty, running a triathlon, whatever it is, and you're out in the sun is beaming down on you, the beads of sweat are literally, you know, building up on your skin, your body is just sweating to keep cool. And just imagine this fingerprint, you know, imagine you have a water bottle with a metal outer cap or outer holder, where your fingerprint, when you touch it, it literally like leaves that fingerprint there. But it's left from the sweat and the oils that your body naturally produces. Or imagine like the trail of a comet going across the sky. Comet's long gone, but it still leaves that trail kind of behind it. Or the wave. The example I gave earlier was the wave moving in, moving out, leaving behind things from the sea. That left behind sort of salt and brine, seashells on the beach, whatever imagery you want to take, or this fingerprint. Imagine the oils from your finger and the sweat and perspiration and just salty parts of the sweat. A good way to really imagine the scent is, have you ever worked out so hard that you're just dripping with sweat? Or for the adults who are now lazy, when you were a kid, did you ever work out or play so hard when you actually had energy? Now we get off work and we're just like, oh God, so tired, coffee. But when you were a kid and you had a lot of energy, do you remember playing with your friends and you sweated so hard? It was just, and you had it was natural back then when you were a kid. It's easier for your body to, go through that hard play. You'd play for hours and hours and it would seem like nothing. Now you do 15 minutes of workout and you're like, oh God. But remember sweating and just profusely sweating. And if you've ever had sweat dripping down your face so hard that it's almost gotten to your mouth and you almost like can taste the sweat. And what's that taste like? It tastes like salty water, like you took water and dumped some iodized salt in there or something. And so that feeling of like salty, almost maybe like a copper penny in your mouth. And imagine that leathery end of the castoreum working with the dirty parts of the ambergris and the clean parts of the ambergris to just give this skin sweat-like feel. And that's why I really think after wearing this, that this is his representation of what a human pheromone would be, since we don't have pheromones, as far as I'm concerned. Although if I do have a musk pod in me as a ram, it's going to be worth a lot of money one day. But anyways, that's my prognosis. I've rambled on enough about this. It's interesting because speaking of maybe just thinking of what a human pheromone would smell like, if you've ever been around high school boys, or if you've ever, or if you have a kid that's in high school or something like that. I remember being in high school, and I remember distinctly it was my freshman year, and they always told us, bring home your gym clothes, bring them home. And I remember the Thanksgiving weekend. It was a long weekend. We used to get there at like 5 o'clock to practice for basketball, and then we'd shower before class and all that stuff. But we would practice pretty hard in the morning, and so it was like a Thursday. Then we were off like Friday, Monday, Tuesday. We got back Wednesday or something, right? So it was like 5 days or something. And my clothes sat in this locker, drenched with like high school boy sweat. Testosterone shooting out of my ears at the time. And that smell, the smell of an 18-year-old, let's say, with testosterone shooting out of his pores versus the smell of like a 50 or 60 or 70-year-old man's sweat is different. There's no getting around it. It is definitely different. And so this, I think, if you can put some of the imagery I've tried to capture, this is not an easy review, by the way, not an easy review. But if you can take some of the imagery I've captured here, the left behind feeling, the fingerprint, the oiliness, the saltiness of the sweat, the testosterone side of the sweat. Because remember, you take a musk pod, that musk pod is made to keep other male deers out, tell them this is my territory, and to also attract the female deers, right, that come into the territory. And so this kind of gives a feeling of that. Like if a man's sweat were to attract a woman, this is what it would potentially smell like. And I think he did a hell of a job, especially what I will say, especially if you're an ambergris lover. If you are an ambergris lover, and you can get this 16 ml bottle for like $75. So it's not crazy. The bigger bottles are a little more expensive. 30 mils is 143, 50 mils is 234, or those are euros, so do the conversion. But it's not very much. So his work is impressive. I will tell you that. There are two houses that use 100% natural perfumery that I'm taken with. One is Hiram Green. I really like Hiram Green, but for some reason, Hiram Green's 100% natural feels completely different than this guy's 100% natural. And I trust his 100% natural a little more than Hiram Green's. I'm not saying they're not telling the truth, but there is something about some of those Hiram Greens, like how does a 100% natural fragrance have such beast mode projection and longevity and all this stuff as something like Hyde? Hyde is just, it's so strong. So Hiram Green, though, those two houses I really like as far as, 100% natural perfumery. And so it's not easy to do that type of perfumery, but this is a house that I really feel like deserves more love from the fragrance community. My 2 cents, especially if you've taken that next step and you're not wearing the Al Rehab, Latafa, clones, Armaf clones. You're beyond that. You scoff at all that. You're tired of the compliment getter videos. You're tired of all that shit. You're ready to take the next step and really study perfumery. La Via del Profumo is a name you should not forget. It's not catchy, right? And like I said, very few people watched my first video on it. Very few people will watch this video on it, but it's definitely a house that deserves the attention. Okay, enough 30 minutes of a rambling on a Monday or a Tuesday afternoon is enough. I've got things to do. So cheers, guys. Love you all as always. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.